So we're going to examples 5 and 6, and we are solving the equation. When I look at this, I see there is an x squared, and there's just a constant. So if I move that constant, that 4, to the other side of the equation, I can do square roots. I can isolate that squared. So how do I move the 4 over? Does everybody know where we are? How do I move the 4 over? Subtract 4 from both sides. So I get x squared equals negative 4. Now how do I cancel out the squared? Square root. But if I square root, what else do I have to do? Plus minus. The imaginary number will come in just a moment. So now we have x equals plus minus square root negative 4. So when you do square roots, you have to have plus minus. You should be getting 2 answers. The x squared tells us 2 answers. From here, we know that you can't, or we hopefully know that we cannot square root a negative number. So we are going to break apart square root negative 4 to square root positive 4 and square root negative 1. That plus minus is still there. We have x equals plus minus. What is the square root of 4? What is the square root of negative 1? I. So our solutions in fancy brackets, because there's more than one, plus minus 2i. If you want to write those as negative 2i, comma positive 2i, that's okay also. Okay, the next example, same kind. What should we do to get the x squared by itself? What should we do first? Add the 11, yes. So we get 2x squared equals negative 36. What cancels out the 2x squared? Divide by 2. So x squared equals negative 18. Now what do I do? Square root, but if I square root, plus minus. Plus minus square root negative 18. So I have to break that apart. So I have square root 18 and square root negative 1. And that plus minus is still there. Can I take the square root of 18? No. So we're going to break apart square root of 18 even further. So square root of what and square root of what? What perfect square goes into 18? 9 times 2. So we're going to have the solutions of plus minus. The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of negative 1 is I. And then we write our radical 2, our square root 2, last. So we don't just write it in the order that it's written above. You have to put it as like plus minus first, then the 3, then the I, then the square root 2. And then, for example, 6 says find the zeros. What does that mean? Make the y 0. Oh no, I don't see a y. F of x 0, right? We're going to make f of x 0. We have 0 equals 4x squared plus 20. And how would you like to solve this one? The same way we were just doing the other ones? What should I do? I need to isolate x squared. What should I do? Subtract the 20. So we have negative 20 equals 4x squared. Divide by 4. We have x squared equals negative 5. What do I do now? I have to square root, but if I square root, I got to do plus minus. Bless you. So I have x squared equals plus minus square root negative 5. I cannot leave the square root of the negative number. So I'm going to break it apart. So I have square root of 5 and square root of negative 1. I'm going to write my solution plus minus. I don't know the square root of 5, but I do know the square root of negative 1. The stuff I know is going to go in front. What's the square root of negative 1? I. And then I don't know the square root of 5, so we leave it. Plus minus I square root of 5. Okay, there was something we skipped yesterday that we're going to just do an example or two of. We're going to go back to, and it is example 2. This is two complex numbers that are equal. Two complex numbers that are equal. And complex numbers are in the form of A plus BI. These are equal. So when we look at these two sides of the equation, the real part on the left is the 2x. That's the part without the I. And then the real part on the right side of the equation is the 10. So since these are equal, I can say 2x equals 10. So what's x equal? 5. And then the imaginary part, negative 7i, is equivalent to the imaginary part, yi. So I have negative 7i is equal to yi. What does y have to equal? Negative 7. Tough stuff. One more of those. Let's do 6, because that one looks harder. So I'm looking at the two equations, the two sides of the equation, they're equal. So 9 is the real part. And the real part has to equal the real part on the other side. What part on the other side doesn't have an I? And the negative 2x. So those have to be equal. So I say 9 equals negative 2x. So I solve that equation. What does x equal? Negative 4.5 or negative 9/2, however you decide to write it. They're the same. Sorry, I forgot a negative sign. And then the other part would be 4yi. That's the imaginary part. So what's the imaginary part of the other side? 3i. So we have 4yi equals 3i. You see how both sides have an I? So I'm going to ignore the I. I'm going to say 4y equals 3. So what's y have to equal? Divide by 4. So what's y equal? 3/4. Or you can write 0.75. All right, one last tiny little thing. Real fast. I know we're like short on time. This example 4. When you multiply I times I, we did this yesterday, when we multiply I times I, what do you get? You get negative 1. I times I is negative 1. So here, this is the distributed property. You're going to multiply 4i times negative 6. You're going to get negative 24i. And you're going to multiply 4i times I. And you're going to get plus 4i squared. But what's I times I? That's negative 1. So now I have negative 24i plus 4 times negative 1. I'm also going to put my answer in the form of A plus BI, so I'm going to write the minus 24i second. What would be first? Negative 4. Wherever you multiply an I times an I, you have to make it -1. So this very last example that we're going to do, how would I multiply 2 terms times 2 terms? Done it a lot lately. Starts with an F, has an O, then an I, and then an L. We'll distribute. So 9 times -4, -36. Outside, 9 times 7i, plus 63i. Inside, -2i times -4, plus 8i. And then last is -2 times positive 7i. So it'll be -14, but it's I times I squared. And what did I say I times I is? So this right here, is -1. So I really have...
Good afternoon, Firebirds. I'd like to thank you for a good day. We allowed the staff out doing different things, learning environments, and thank you to the subs and everybody else that's chipped in with their aides and everybody else chipped in to help. So we really appreciate it, and the students are doing the right thing. Remember tonight, our boys travel to Coleraine, take on Cardinal football, 7 o'clock start. Also tomorrow, volleyball team 2:30 at East, and our soccer team boys tomorrow night here at 7.
If you want to take a photo of this, you can. It's online, big ideas.
Go Firebirds.
The book pages are there. It's on Canvas already. The book pages are there if your big ideas doesn't work. You can get on Canvas, get the assignment if you can't take a picture of it before you leave.
This is the thing that was on there a couple days ago.
Yes, I uploaded it early. Somebody forgot their planner. I don't know who it is. Carly. It's Carly. Number 3 for her.
Carly, did you forget your planner again?